This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Hello and welcome everyone to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast. I'm Tony Black and you are listening to our coverage of minute 108 of the X-Files Fight the Future. This minute begins at 1 hour 47 minutes exactly as we fade up on the Office of Professional Review at FBI headquarters, and it ends on 1 hour 47 minutes and 59 seconds with the shot of a tanker truck saying nature's best corn oil. And to discuss this minute, I'm joined by a returning guest on Fight the Future Minute in X-Cast patron Caredwen Foley. Caredwen, this is the first time we've ever recorded, so it's really nice to speak to you.
Yes, it's a pleasure to get to record with you.
So obviously you've been on a bit earlier in the film's run with a few stints with Carl, I think earlier, talking about Fight the Future. And we're really close towards the end now of the whole film. And Carl's just been on. This is my turn back in the chair. I've been away for a while actually. I think my last appearance was during the Mulder sort of getting into the spaceship basically. So a long time's passed now, and we're now all the action stuff's gone, and we're back at the FBI now for some cover-up shenanigans. So I mean, by this stage, I mean, have you enjoyed the ending up to this point, you know, in terms of, do you think now did you enjoy like the final climax in the spaceship and things like that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that I think it really is very classically kind of X-Files blown up to the big screen, and not that the TV show was ever shy about taking on really kind of cinematic images or you know, kind of production activities or things like that, but really, you know, if you had to take an already pretty cinematic show and kind of drive it up to 11, I think that the rising action and the kind of climax of this film does a really fantastic job with that. And so I think when you reach that point, it's sort of it makes you curious about how the kind of denouement of the film is going to go, and so here we are in it. And I think this actually, the scene and the ones that follow it do a really nice job of bringing it to that kind of satisfying but unsatisfying sort of mysterious close.
Denouement's a lovely way of putting it, actually, because that's exactly what it is, isn't it? This is the classic section of wrap up. You know, it's bringing all the threads together. We've had the big climax with the spaceship and the Antarctic stuff, and I agree with you. I think that's the stuff. It's kind of like the end of Endgame in season 2, like ramped up to 11, isn't it? It's like it's explosive blockbuster action, which is befitted a movie, you know, a movie scope. Even though once again it's, you know, Scully not seeing a big spaceship, a recurring X-Files trope.
Exactly, it's classic.
And that's it. You want that in a movie, don't you? But the biggest spaceship as well, like the biggest she could have possibly ever missed. But yeah, this brings us now to the important wrap up, because this is crucial because it's a big cover up at this stage. So the first thing we see is back in the pan. You know, we open up on the OPR for I think the third time in the movie, something like that, and Jaina Cassidy is back, Blythe Deana, because before I think the first time was after the bombing, and then it's when Scully's got the B in her shirt, isn't it? When she's in there.
Yep, we see her in there a second time there, and now we're back for a third meeting with Blythe Deana, giving her her, you know, wrap up voiceover while we watch the black-haired man stealing these bone fragments from the FBI field office to try and destroy the evidence.
What do you think about the character of Jaina Cassidy as a FBI major sort of player. Do you think we should have seen her again, or did she work well for you?
I think she did work well. It would have been interesting to see her again, especially maybe in the beginning, considering the kind of content of that episode and the way that it follows on, quite deliberately from the film. But I can't say I hold it against them too much that that we see her, we see her here and we don't see her elsewhere. I do think that Blythe Danner is great in this role because she has that perfectly chilly, starchy sort of presentation that a lot of women of her age in positions of authority kind of needed to cultivate, like that sort of steeliness. So I think she's great in sort of a peculiar role, right? Because we're not. I'm not sure if we're meant to think that she is. I don't think we're meant to think that she's an active participant in the cover-up, but that she's that she's kind of propagating this narrative that she's been told and that she believes because most of the people walking around the FBI believe it. She does seem genuinely shocked. We'll get in a minute to the end of this scene. But I think she's quite good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is strange that she didn't crop up in the beginning because they kind of have to create a new version of her, don't they? The character that Wendy Malick plays in the beginning. It is a shame because it feels like, you wonder, maybe they asked Blythe Danner to come back and she couldn't do it. It could have been. And then they had to rewrite the character and they gave her a new name and things like that. Because it would have been a nice little bit of continuity. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily have had to see her again. But she could have come back for that one episode, like you say, which very much follows on from this. But never mind. I mean, it's one of those things. She was very good in this film, though. Blythe Danner, she was great. She was a very good addition. And then, like as she's talking and she's explaining that she can't really put anything that Scully's put in her report and send it off to the Justice Department because it's it's mad on the face of it. You see that it's not mad at all because you've got the cover up happening. And I had to do a bit of you're ahead of me obviously because you talked about the black haired man and I had forgotten his name completely. I knew the syndicate guy who at the end goes into the lab and takes the corn. I didn't, but I knew he was in the show, but I didn't know his name.
It's not one of the most inventive of the of those like credits names. I think that like the well manicured man gets much better treatment where that's concerned. Although obviously pretty rough treatment in this film. But R.I.P. Yeah, poor guy. But yeah, I think the ones when they just describe them by like the hard faced man, the black haired man.
Yeah, tie-wearing man. Yeah, they'd run out of names, hadn't they? They really had by that point. Well, has he got black hair? Well, so have a lot of people. Oh, it doesn't matter. Just give him black hair. He's a good actor, though. Michael Seamus Wiles, his name is. He doesn't really get any lines, really, particularly. Very rarely. But he's gone on to be he was in Breaking Bad, most specifically. He played... have you watched Breaking Bad?
Yes, I have. Who was he?
Do you remember Hank's boss in the DEA?
Yes.
And he was also in Sons of Anarchy, and he plays another sort of biker guy, like a head of like another chapter of the biker guys. So he's cropped up in other things, and he gets lines. He gets more lines in those things. But it's a good bit of continuity though, because he was in The End, which was the episode before this, and then he also crops up in Enemy as well in season 7, working for the Smoking Man. He's involved in all that. I can't quite remember what he does. I think it might be that he kills someone, or I think it could be that he kills the scientist guy in NME who's got the cure to disease or something like that. I can't quite. I'd have to watch it back. He's not what people remember about NME anymore. Let's be honest.
No, it's definitely it's sort of overtaken itself, I guess.
Yeah, it's now an infamous X-File for obvious reasons. But yeah, so it was a nice bit of continuity to have him in. But generally, I think I like Scully's attitude in this. I mean, it feels like she doesn't care at this point. She's like, previously she's been quite deferential to OPR and she's understood the need to get back to it and, the importance of representing and all this kind of thing. But here, I don't know, did you get the vibe of, I've been through so much now, I don't care what you've got to say? Very
strongly. I thought something that was notable, and tell me if this is something that occurred to you or if maybe I noticed this for more like gender cultural programming reasons, but she's not wearing makeup, or at least Scully isn't wearing makeup. I'm sure Gillian Anderson is because she wouldn't look so frostbitten otherwise. And she's also in all black. And we haven't seen her look this stark since, like, Redux. I mean, she really looks like hell. And it's obvious that she shows up that way because she wants to send a message to the committee, right? Like, we never see Scully looking anything other than, you know, a porcelain doll. Like, she always looks perfect. But obviously, like, this wasn't out of a lack of time to prepare or anything. Because even when we saw her getting back from Texas and was late for her OPR meeting, she still pauses in the hallway to, like, make sure she doesn't look a complete mess. Here, she doesn't. She didn't, clearly. And I think that's kind of notable because we have seen her want to project this image of smoothness and professionalism and deference to OPR, but really, you know, it couldn't be a stronger signal that she is done with this.
Yeah, that's a really good read on it, actually, because I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, that it might have been an intentional sort of Scully choice to bring that out herself, you know, as opposed to the fact, obviously, you've got the makeup of, like you said, the frostbite and the bruising and things like that, but that she's trying to make a point. Yeah, that's really good. It could well be, because there is a general frustration with the process, you know, in this, and that, you know, her face when Cassidy's turning around and saying, you know, I find a lot of this hard to believe, and I think she says at one point, what is it you find hard to believe exactly, you know? Like,
right? Do you find the frostbite on my face and, like, the bruises on it? Is this hard to believe?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to get this in Washington DC or Dallas, am I? You know, it's that whole. Yeah, visibly I look like I've been through a trauma, and also I suppose it's the whole thing of her being questioned in. I'm trying to think of the right word here, but with Mulder, everyone expects him to be a lunatic, but Scully has a level of respect, I think, that she expects from them. You know, in that she's a scientist, she's a serious woman. She doesn't lie about things. She wouldn't fake the truth. She would only ever put in a report what she believed was the truth, you know?
Yeah, and she hasn't had her integrity questioned in that way. She isn't usually under scrutiny when she, you know, even when she comes back saying something that kind of strains credulity a little bit. I think she is accustomed to being taken seriously. And so now to be dismissed the way that Mulder is often dismissed, I think it must feel quite harsh, especially, you know, after the ordeal that they've both just been through.
And I think that's kind of like the difference with the movie, isn't it? Because with the movie, even though, yeah, okay, we joke about how she missed seeing the spaceship, she does know that she was involved. She was in Antarctica. She was on some kind of whether she thinks it's an alien craft or a military base or whatever. She knows that she was kidnapped. She knows that she was infected with a virus and that she nearly died. So these are massive things that don't always happen to her in every mythology episode. You know, the stakes are higher. So she's aware that there have been. This is almost on the level of her abduction, isn't it? In terms of sheer scale of what happened to her.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way before. I mean, obviously the missing time in the abduction is such an invasion and so scary. And of course, you know, I think all of the experiments that were done there are also of, you know, such different gravity. But that was kind of the goal here too, right? Like they were using these people infected with the alien virus as incubators, essentially, again. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's a pretty horrifying violation, and then also to be kind of whisked away to literally the ends of the earth. It's hard to imagine.
You're right though, in that the trauma of the abduction is different. It's a different, the lack of knowledge, of understanding. I mean, you know, she knows what happened in this instance. She knows. Mulder can tell her that. Mulder can, you know, you were on an alien ship under the ice in Antarctica. You were kid, you know. Whereas with her abduction, even now, you know, at the end of season 11, she doesn't quite know what happened. You know, she's never going to know quite what happened in that time, and that's awful. That's a different kind of trauma and violation. But you know, I suppose the point is that the stakes are high, in that she wouldn't put in a report to the OPR fabrications, and it's a bit like when in like Tunguska and Terma, she's called to Congress and she's trying to explain to them the truth, and they don't want to hear it. You know, it's a similar kind of thing in that where Mulder is, and they're trying to get the wrong answer out of her, aren't they? And she's steadfast. She's like, no, I'll go to jail. You know, I love that about Scully.
Yeah, I like that too. And actually, that's something that really, I know we're not talking about Tunguska and Terma today, but that really elevates those episodes for me, particularly Terma, I think, in that way. I mean, I think Tunguska is the better episode, But I really do think, even though there's some kind of false drama around it, and there's a little, like, I think that some of the pacing in that episode isn't very good, but I do think that just as a kind of character study, it's quite interesting in that way.
No, I completely agree. And I find a parallel there definitely with this in terms of the way she reacts, for sure. So yeah, it's good. And this obviously carries on into the next minute, but you've got before that shots of the cover-up continuing. In this case, the tanker trucks are being replaced or being just, shipped off to something else, and they've got a sign on, as I said, nature's own corn oil. Chris Carter made the point that he felt like a lot of these scenes reminded him of the pilot episode where things are being covered up, which is interesting because I hadn't quite thought of the pilot, to be honest, but I can see what he's getting at, really, with those sort of the scenes where the smoking man's putting the things back in the base, at the end of the pilot and then the end of the Erlenmeyer flask. I can see a similarity there in a way.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, and having, the scene at the end of the pilot, or toward the end of the pilot, where their hotel gets torched, and, I can see there are some common threads there, but I agree the mood is different, and obviously just the direction is very different. That feels a lot more hidden and secretive and kind of happening behind the scenes, whereas this feels almost like it's happening, Mulder and Scully aren't present for it, but it kind of feels like it's in their faces because what they've just seen is so enormous and so grand. Yeah,
it's a much, much bigger cover-up, yeah, for sure. And Carter also said that even though Rob Bowman obviously directs the film, he shot the sequences with the tanker trucks to help out, basically, yeah, like some second unit sort of stuff. You get the feeling of a team effort at times with this film. But yeah, obviously this carries on into the next minute, and it's not quite over yet with Cassidy's face-off with Scully. So yeah, you're going to be back for minute 109, Caredwen. So the cover-up will continue then. I'll see you then for that.
All right, great. I will talk to you then.
Cool. Okay, so until our next minute, guys, always remember, trust no one. Elsewhere on We Made This. Cine Mortuary Podcast.
Falling into that trap of really understanding how lame some of this stuff is. Like, I do know a bit about computers, not as much as probably their research team did, but this was up like Under Siege 2 with Steven Seagal on a train and this world-renowned computer hacker that's trying to like detonate a nuke under the White House. Like, he's getting counter-hacked on his computer and he says, I'll give him an extra gig of RAM, see how they deal with that. Like, what? You're just going to upgrade their computer for him?
Life's milestones.
When my nana died a few years ago, she was cremated and we got her ashes. So she has 3 kids. So the ashes were split 3 ways.
That makes sense.
However, when we got the ashes back from the funeral director, they were just literally in a bag. So my mum got out the baking scales from the kitchen.
We dig music.
I'm going to do my classic, not a front 242 comparison, but when I was listening to Nookie, I thought that one was really like Sensor. It's, that hard-edged industrial rap noise thing. Yeah, I thought
it's not a million miles away from like Age of Panic and stuff like that.
Well, no, exactly, or Switch.
Danceable with rapping.
Yeah.
And guitars. Like, yeah. This is why I was into industrial and nu metal, because it's basically the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just there's more crying in nu metal.
and Limp Bizkit were fairly heavily influenced by industrial.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.